Brilliant. Thank you, Ben, and thank you very much, Mike. Certainly appreciate that, Mike, and basically teeing up my presentation for me. I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through a general Unit4 Financials product update. The areas that I plan to cover today, I'll have a look at roadmap, which I know people are always interested in, talk a little bit about what's new. I had some videos and product to show, but Phil Leaf, having done such a great job earlier today on the new functionality that's been delivered, I thought I'd save some time and take that out. I want to introduce to most of you, if you haven't already seen the new ideation. Can you hear me okay? Can somebody just confirm you can hear me?
Yes. Hi, Craig. So you dropped out momentarily there, but you're back again. So
yeah, somebody muted me. I don't know who's muted me there, but I think it was Phil, but never mind. Phil Jacobs. Thank you, Phil. Trust him to hijack my session, Ben. So just picking up on the ideation portal, some of you may have already come across the ideation portal on Community4U if you're active users on Community4U, but I'll give you some insight into the new ideation portal and functionality that's available. I will pick up on the Unit4 innovation, particularly around the people platform and microservices that we can consume as Unit4 Financials users. So pick up from where Mike left off. And then I also want to talk a little bit more about upgrading and benefits of the cloud. So really, you know, it's your investment, it's our investment. Let's make the best use of it. So those are the areas I plan to cover. And let's get straight to the roadmap. If my clicker works and takes me to the next screen, brilliant. So here we go. So I'm going to keep it very high level and quite simple. I think just, you know, not to forget what we've recently released and done. Many of you will be aware that most recently we have released what we call our continuous release 2020 Q2. That was released on the 30th of April. Note the naming conventions that I'm using here. Let's talk a little bit about that. Our most current release, which yes, logically would have followed version 14 and become version 15. And behind the scenes, there is a build number, so we will know what build of the software you're using. But in terms of positioning and talking about what our release is called, from here on forward, the current release, the continuous release as we call it, will just be known as Unit4 Financials. We will be doing quarterly releases, and every release will just be referred to by the time frame that it was released, i.e. the most recent one, which we released on the 30th of April, will be known as the 2020 Q2 release. So when we talk about the product that we that we might be demonstrating, it will be referred to as Unit4 Financials. And if anybody wants to know which release, it'll be the quarter and the year. So not forgetting the other supported version that we currently support is version 14. We did a incremental release, so a maintenance release of version 14 at the end of March. And the one prior to that was in mid-December, so R11 or release 11. And I've certainly seen lots of evidence of people downloading those releases, those updates, which is of course good news. So then moving on to the next 6 months, what have we planned as part of our continuous release? I still make reference to version 15 just from a transition perspective, but over time that certainly will fall away, as you will see even in this presentation. So here, the first thing I want to highlight that we will be prioritizing in our development backlog is the extension kit. That, of course, is all on the back of taking advantage of services on the people platform. And that's going to give our customers who are migrating to our Unit4 Financials continuous release the ability to extend their product, connecting to all sorts of other products and or operational systems that they might have. Bear in mind, when you are upgrading, moving to the cloud, there will be an expectation, any non-cloud friendly interfaces will need to be rewritten over time. Yes, of course, things like if you're using table link, ironically, the cloud improvements that that I talk about here in the 6-month plan is to improve the cloud capabilities of table link, for example, so that existing interfaces that you have, for example, using table link can still be used. However, you might have others that will require rewriting, and we're just trying to make that as simple as possible. I talk about local product adoption. Here I'm thinking of I'm talking about the structured output capability that will allow us to generate reports for things like Ulster, things like GDPDU, things like FEC in France. Structured output lends itself very well to extracting data in XMLI format to allow us to report to authorities those statutory requirements. I've made brief reference to cloud improvements. And then, finally on the list in the 6 months is the Message Hub integration. Now, Message Hub integration will give us even greater access and greater capabilities to consume those people platform services. So, for example, the extension kit can be used in conjunction with the Message Hub and give us even greater capabilities. And that's what we want to ensure. The innovation from a Unit4 Financials perspective, we want to be able to use the broader Unit4 community and the investment effort that broader community offers us and take advantage of that innovation. Beyond 2020, i.e. 2020 and beyond, 2021 and beyond, there's obviously quite a few things in the backlog. This is in no particular priority order. And for now, I'm listing a few things, but I don't want to get into any detail. I don't want to set any false promises of one priority is higher than the other. Those are just things that are on the backlog, things that we are considering. If I pick 2 out there that come to mind for me, is the document repository. We will definitely have to look to do something about the repository, just in terms of capacity and being able to store as much as we can in the repository. There are some limitations there. And then also around transactional reporting, to what extent can we incorporate reporting capabilities, transactional reporting capabilities as part of the product? There seems to be a greater requirement for transactional reporting in some other territories. It certainly differs by territory. I'm just keeping an eye on the time here, Ben. I want to make sure I can get done by my 3:30 slot, so I'll crack on a bit. Just a quick target release schedule that I just want to sort of highlight again. We will be looking to do quarterly releases of certainly our continuous release, our current release. We'll be doing our incremental maintenance release of version 14. The next release scheduled on Unit4 Financials is the 2020 Q3 release. And on version 14, the next incremental release is due out in June. Those of you who are accessing the community portal, there is always a release schedule that's published on the community portal. I will make reference, and I will also show some screenshots of the community portal. I'll stop short of actually navigating and doing a live demo on it, only because I think many of you will already be accessing it, but I also just want to give you a few pointers. And so beyond that, we will continue to do our quarterly release on our supported versions of the product. I want to draw your attention to, interesting, I'm just noticing a little typo on my schedule that has two 2022s. On the right hand side, you'll see that should be 2023, and the point that I want to highlight there is that support for version 14 will end at the end of 2022. Now, the focus will then, of course, be, all the investment will be on our Unit 4 financials release, i.e. version 15, as we refer to it still. So the key thing there is, you will have had the best part of 3 years on version 14, and that's kind of a typical release cycle of a particular version when we look back over the last X number of years. So then if I pop into a few things about the community portal and kind of where you can get additional information on the release or any releases. So this is just a screenshot for those of you who aren't familiar with the community portal. So essentially you go into the community portal. Under My Solutions, you'll have financials. You'll essentially have access to products that you are licensed for. We publish on a regular basis news articles. Here are just some examples of the release of the 2020 Q2 release. What, obviously we're publishing that it's available, but if you click down on that, it takes you to all sorts of detail, what's come out in that release, if the support matrix has changed. So obviously at a 2020 Q2 release, which is not a base release in this case, there's no change to the support matrix, so we haven't updated that. But then, you can see for yourself, we've got, information about language packs that have become available. These are nothing other than drill throughs to the underlying news item and article. I do also just want to point you to the documentation. If you wanted to find out additional information and more details, so if we think of the most recent release, if I just go to the next slide, I've drilled through, but just to give you an idea, from the documentations menu option, I've been able to access everything about the new Unit 4 financials release. So you will see we refer to it as the Unit 4 financials, but there is a reference to the build number, and that's 15 in this case, .0.4. I just copied the table of contents to give you an idea of everything that we are providing additional information on in that particular release note documentation. So if you're looking for any detailed information, it is available. This, of course, the release notes, but similarly, I also just took an example of the technical guide here of a later build, 15.1.3. So that is the 2020 Q2 release that is being referenced here. And then, there's a technical guide of everything that is either changed or additional information that you need. Okay. So I'm not going to talk in any more detail. I mean, I've referenced a couple of slides that I've shown certainly last year when we were talking about, things, the enhancements that we were looking to do. I highlight a couple here which are, yes, favorites in the sense that these are directly on the back of customer enhancements. I know Phil talked about these this morning. There was the one there. There was a couple of others. I know there was a question around the undo year end. I know Phil answered that question. There was a change pay period, which is a customer enhancement that's been floating around for a bit. So there are a number of things that have been delivered. Suffice to say, the details of which are available in those release notes that I've referenced that are available on the Community4You portal. And so while I'm on the subject of what's new, I also just thought I would bring your attention to the new website, the new Unit4 website. And there is a very a dedicated financial section. So this is where you can find out as existing customers, I'm not expecting, that's where you would go for information that you need. I mean, you will have a relationship with either your Unit4 account manager or, for that matter, a Unit4 partner like Millennium, who you have a relationship with, who you typically get your information from. But there is, of course, a lot of self-help that is available. There are brochures that you can download here, Unit4 Financials brochure, if you wanted to know more about other capabilities. For example, if you don't use procurement, if you don't use assets, the brochure will give you the very high level information about those areas or capabilities within the product. Yeah, and of course, you can provide that to any one of your kind of associate companies or anyone else who might be interested in understanding a little bit more about Unit4 Financials. And it's been freshly redone, relaunched, and personally, I think very user friendly and informative more than anything else. Okay. So then let's move on to the next section. I talked about ideation. This is an area where not only Unit4, but I know software vendors are challenged in trying to ensure that the customer's voice is heard, and once the customer has raised their voice, in finding resource and the ability to prioritize enhancements, ideas that have been submitted, and then of course to deliver those. So I'm certainly very pleased to announce that our product ideation portal on Community4You went live on the 20th of April. Financials has been the leader within the Unit4 company to go live with the product ideation. I know there has already been quite a bit of activity on Community4You with regards to product ideation. There are a couple of things that I want to point out. Last year, this time, we were talking about the enhancement system that had been put in place. Yes, okay, it has changed. I mean, I don't want to spend any particular amount of time on the fact that it's changed again. Suffice to say, what I have done is I've taken the most popular ideas from the old enhancement system, or enhancement request system, I believe we called it, and I've populated those in the new product ideas area. The way you'll be able to identify items that have been brought forward is the title is prefixed with brought forward, BFWD, brought forward, a reference to the enhancement idea number in the old system, and then who logged the idea. I happen to take a couple here that was originally logged by Unit4. In some cases, historically, customers were asking consultants to log ideas, which then are logged under a Unit4 ID rather than the customer's ID. Moving forward, the message here is your ability to go and suggest a new idea in terms of what you need to complete is very straightforward, a very straightforward form. We've tried to simplify that as best as possible. And the good news is, the improvements or the benefits of the new system, I think, make it well worth the transition that we've made. There are a couple of things that I want to just then touch on. So I've already indicated that this has been live since the 20th of April. So the question you might have is, so how's this going to be better for me? Okay, so I think firstly, the idea is that the platform differs from enhancement requests as it makes suggesting and processing ideas much more transparent than what you were used to. And I think that's the key thing really, is that one, the transparency of the idea, but also bear in mind the whole purpose of, the whole purpose, come back to the whole purpose, but the idea behind the ideation process is that it is not about your individual ideas and tracking your specific idea that you've submitted, but what we want to achieve is that we put ideas that we as a community can collaborate on, and the more the community collaborate on a particular idea, the more that idea rises to the top and ultimately finds its way into the product. I think in terms of ideas that will be implemented, yes, the most popular ones, of course, based on how much interaction, how much kudos is given to a particular idea. So that for sure. But then, there's definitely also some evaluation criteria that we as a product management team within Unit 4 will use. And that's based around, is it feasible in terms of being able to deliver within a time frame with the given capacity that we have? Those sorts of things. Does it fit the strategic direction? To use a hypothetical example, if somebody is asking us to go down a path that isn't cloud, it's not going to be attractive from a Unit 4 strategy perspective. So from a evaluation criteria, those sorts of ideas will be declined. So what happens to your idea? Okay, let's talk a little bit about kind of a process flow here. A couple of things. So firstly, again, what's different? Any new idea that is logged, that is submitted, will immediately be available for voting. In the past, that was not the case. Yes, there may be some situations where new ideas will require additional information, which on a weekly basis between myself and many of you know Jane Dolan, who's now the product owner within the R&D team, we review those ideas. If we need more information, we'll obviously communicate back to the person who submitted the idea. And then, of course, the voting just continues on a quarterly basis in line with planning for the quarterly releases. We will take out the top 20% of ideas that have been submitted. So top being based on essentially the amount of kudos a idea gets. But bear in mind, there is this consideration that needs to be given to criteria, meeting criteria, both in terms of feasibility, technical feasibility, but also Unit 4 strategy. So once we've had a look at the top 20%, I think instantly the remaining are archived or closed, and the top 20% are then considered. And of the top 20%, those that are most popular / most feasible / meet the criteria as best or best meet the criteria, they will go into the backlog, and we will endeavor to put enhancements into every quarterly release. So we are trying to ring fence some resource in order to deliver back items in the backlog, and clearly there will be an audit trail from when an idea is logged all the way through to when it's delivered or when it is archived. And in terms of transparency, of course, you can always go back into the system and look at the ideas that you've logged. But one of the things that Community4U will offer you is the ability to subscribe to any changes to not only your particular ideas, but also subscribe to any news items that are posted, etc. So you essentially are then prompted for new information, or prompted every time something changes on an idea you logged or an idea you're interested in. Okay, so I'm conscious of time here, just need to crack on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about the Unit 4 innovation, and segueing from Mike's presentation earlier on. So Mike certainly touched on the Unit 4 People Experience Suite and what ultimately is where a lot of the focus of the development resource is spent is around ensuring that our ERP application, but beyond the ERP application, the whole Unit4 People Experience Suite offers capabilities across the Unit4 product footprint. If we look at the Unit4 ecosystem, I'll talk a little bit about kind of the people platform. So the first thing, when I look at this diagram, you kind of ask yourself, okay, so where does financials fit in? And financials, yes, I could have put financials as an extra ball down the bottom where you see the 4 balls here. For me, financials is part of ERP. Yes, it may be separate today, but longer term, it fits into that very bucket. And so from a Unit4 financials perspective, we have connected financials to this people platform for certain of these microservices that we want to consume. So apps that are built, or for that matter, in some cases, we can consume things like the capabilities within the extension kit without necessarily going via the message hub. So the key thing is, in order for Unit4 financials to take advantage of innovation on this people platform, we have to make sure that financials can use, whether it's extension kit, whether it's any of these apps, localizations that are developed. And you know, the first one such example that I thought I'd pull out is around VAT reporting. Okay, so today Unit4 financials has what I would call a dedicated connection to Avalara VAT reporting. We're using our structured output capability in order to extract VAT-related transactions and submit an XMLI file to VAT reporting. However, if you look at what our Unit4 ERP colleagues have done, is they've built a far more extensive extraction routine using the extension kit and the integration kit to populate Avalara VAT reporting. And so in their scenario, our Unit4 financials application would just simply be replaced by ERP or UBW as it's known, or historically was known, and we replace that ERP with Unit4 financials, and we essentially, yes, there's obviously some mapping, some services that are required in order to map via the message hub and connect to the extension kit and the integration kit to deliver the information into VAT reporting. So that's just an example there. I then want to pick up on a slide that Mike talked quite a little bit about. I can just sort of elaborate on a few more things here. I think first and foremost, what I want to highlight, again, if you look at option 1, what I've termed the status quo, i.e. you're on a particular Unit4 financials version. If I start with the older versions and highlight version 12 and version 13, in the case of 12, support has already ended. In the case of 13, support ends 2021. However, standard support for 13 has already ended as well. It is on critical bug fix or critical business standstill support for this year through to 2021, i.e. since the release of V15, which was in February, and hence full support ending on February 2021. So that then says, okay, if you want to continue to use either 12 or 13, your only option is extended life support. Okay, otherwise you're on an unsupported version. When it comes to 14, yes, you can stay on 14, whether that's on premise or you have it in the cloud. However, that will cease 2022. So So if you haven't been aware of that, it's certainly been published, been communicated. It was part of the release notes of the continuous release in February. So I want to highlight that. But just so to be clear, it is an option to stay on version 14 through to 2022. So then we continue on the financial stack. And if you look at option 2, I'm referring to Unit4 financials. I could have said V15, but I'm sticking with Unit4 financials, our current release. You're on a full Unit4 financial stack. You can upgrade on-premise, option 1. You can upgrade on-premise and take FP&A. That's option 2. And I'll stick with those two for a minute. So if you're going down that path, you will have standard support for both options 1 and 2. Let's call it sub 1 and 2 of option 2. And of course, you will still have access to some of the people platform services, in this case, the obvious one, identity services. But as an on-premise customer, yes, you do have access to the cloud, but obviously you've chosen the on-premise path. So option 3 is really the cloud migration and the upgrade, and where I would be pushing or recommending people go. And for me, you're getting the benefit of the financial stack. You're getting the benefit of all the new capabilities, and you are then also opening yourself up, making yourself available. Well, I say making yourself. You are putting yourself in a position to start consuming any of these additional services that'll be filtering down through the people platform. So Q3, we've got access to the extension kit. By Q4, the message hub, and there'll be some additional capabilities on the extension kit. And then, 2021, there are a couple of things that I've identified there as things we can look at and that we'll start using. Longer term, and I say longer term, but for those who want to consider and go down the people experience suite route, that of course opens up all sorts of possibilities. What I do want to highlight, while we have access to all the options down the right-hand side, the people experience suite becomes available from an ERP perspective, the first release of which will be cloud only, and will be moving forward. It'll always be cloud only, but the first release of that we can move on to is in Q3. That said, we have, of course, had a couple of customers. Mike made reference to them, Nuffic and PGGM, a not-for-profit organization, and in the case of PGGM, they are a insurance investment company. So we do have experience of people moving from financials onto the people experience suite, albeit in that case it was still UBW. Okay, I will gloss over the next slide. I've got a couple of things that I still want to cover, and I appreciate I'm getting close to my end here. Ben, if you can I have another 5 minutes, Ben? Is that all right?
No, keep going, Greg. That's fine.
I thought I had until past. Yeah. Okay. So just to say, I've tried to put in a table here what are the sorts of things and the value that you ultimately can expect were you to go down the people experience suite route. So there are a good number of things. The key message there is, as a Unit4 financials customer, if you stick in with the Unit4 financial stack, you have a home. We will continue to support you on the Unit4 financial stack. But of course, if you're looking for, let's call it bigger and better, maybe certainly bigger, a larger footprint of things, then the experience suite going down that route will open up a number of other doors and opportunities for you. And I'll leave it at that for now. I want to then just touch on the last topic, which is around the investments we make in new releases, the investment you've made in us as an organization and our products. In order to get the most value out of your investment, out of our investment, then of course you've got to stay current, you've got to upgrade. Why do you want to upgrade? I think the first question you've got to ask yourself, are you still compliant in terms of, are you on a supported version? If not, that could certainly, if you're in a public, if you're a public company, I mean, that's certainly against a lot of your auditors' wishes, regardless of whether you're in a public company or not. There are constantly, whether it's product improvements, platform changes, fixes, security improvements, performance improvements. These are all sorts of things that you can expect from a new release. And I can't emphasize enough, one, the importance, and two, the value that you can get out of staying current. So again, that is my recommendation, and I'll move on to migrating to the cloud, because there are a couple of slides I want to touch here. So, I'd be I think I mentioned this last year already when we talked, but the key thing here is any new business that any new prospect, whether it's financials, whether it's ERP, they're all cloud opportunities. There's very little, if any, that are still on premise, unless it's kind of an extension of an existing customer who's on premise. So that's what the market is shouting out for. And I suspect as an organization, you would be looking at that as well. So just in terms of the general things you can expect, from whether it's platform support, the different tasks that need to be performed, backups, updates, sourcing hardware, resourcing teams in order to maintain, support that hardware, the security issues, reliability issues, and the list goes on. Those are all sorts of things that Unit4 will take care of in the case of moving to the Unit4 cloud. I will point you to a terms page on the Unit4 website. There's lots of information about, the typical question, what's your security policy? What's, your position around disaster recovery, data protection? What's your service levels? Those are all documented in detail. I couldn't do it justice in a couple of PowerPoint slides, but the details are available for you. If we look at kind of from our perspective, what are the benefits when we're talking to prospective cloud customers? These are the things that we focus on. Yes, clearly there are reduced IT costs. You're freeing up your IT organization. They can focus on things that's important to your business, to run your business. There's, just in terms of, we talk about backups, updates, new versions, all of that is taken care of for you. The run software anywhere, anytime, none more so now. We've experienced the challenges over the last, I forget the number of days, but I think it's somewhere around 50 days with COVID. The challenges of being able to access information. If you're running your own on-premise environment, the challenges that as an organization you would have had, having somebody in the office maintaining that environment, all of that is taken care of for you. There's obviously a risk element. There's the whole business continuity. Our track record of business continuity and ensuring uptime is phenomenal, and you can see that in the SLAs, in the terms that I referred you to earlier on. And of course, I made reference to the innovation that comes from the people platform. Lots of innovations. Obviously, the IDS one, I've made reference to extension kit that is on the roadmap, and we should be able to see that delivered by the Q3 release and be able to take advantage of that. So having given you a little bit of insight, I suppose the first question I end up getting is, so how much is that going to cost? Well, I appreciate, and again here, the intention is not to go into any details, but there are fixed price migration offers, take you over to the cloud, depending on your organization, depending on your size. There are what we call t-shirt sizes to ensure that we tailor the migration effort to your organization, and these are of course indicative. If you fit one of those models, great, we can go down that path. Otherwise, we go down a more tailored route. In order to start that whole cloud journey, there is a simple process whereby, of course, you can engage with your account managers, but you could also go online. I've made reference to the website here. You can then submit a request and your cloud journey essentially commences. We as in Unit 4, the services team will engage with you. They will go through what we term a cloud migration assessment, and together build a map of your journey to the cloud. And on the back of that, we put together a proposal, time and effort, cost associated with it, and we will then be able to engage on that process, get work orders out, etc., to ensure that we can do that as efficiently as possible. Just a couple slides left. First one to say, so why go down the Unit 4 cloud migration journey as opposed to going down either whether it's your own cloud, whether it's that of a competitor? From a Unit 4 perspective, our commitment is a high-speed journey. Yes, it is true that in as little as 20 working days, we can have you on the Unit 4 cloud. There is a fixed migration fee. I've given you an indication of what those could be. We're trying to ensure a very, clear onboarding plan. We're talking about cloud migration experts. These are people who go through the same process on a regular basis, have subject matter expertise, and essentially try to get you from where you are today in an on-premise environment to a fully functional cloud infrastructure in the minimal amount of time, with the minimal amount of disruption and at a very reasonable cost. And throughout that process, ensuring transparency on all elements of the process. Ben, that's me.